Well, good evening and welcome to Yada Yahweh. It's my pleasure to be with you. We have both Kirk and JB here. My guess is that you guys followed at least somewhat the new Trump deal of the century. Have you?
Afraid I haven't.
Have you? Oh, you haven't. Oh, well, the deal of the century. Yeah, it's been announced. The Trumpster, actually, Kirshner, his son-in-law, after about 2 years worth of work, finally unveiled his plan for peace between the Israelis and the Fakistinians. And to his credit, I think he did a pretty decent job, and it's really interesting. What he did, his approach was, I'll negotiate as much as I can with Israel under the premise that the resulting deal has to leave Israel safer and more defensible than she is now. And I will then, based upon that reality, we'll go and get the input of the Palestinians, and our goal with the Palestinians would be to make their lives better. So we're going to offer a plan that substantially improves the lives of the Palestinians while making Israel more safer, recognizing the present reality in terms of the location of the Jewish settlements and the nature of Jerusalem and the like. And there were some aspects of it that I really did like, that Jerusalem becomes the capital of Israel, that he made no attempt to connect every segment of the future Palestinian state, so Israel isn't dissected in her midsection, that the Palestinian state would remain demilitarized, and that no Palestinian state would be awarded until the Palestinians met three criterion, the most important of which was that they stopped sponsoring terrorism. So it was interesting. Of course, even before it was announced, the Fakistinians were denouncing it. And they came out and just flat out lied and said, we were never consulted. And so Kirshner today met with the United Nations and said, that's exceedingly disappointed because I personally met with a boss 4 times. So he said he wasn't consulted. That's a lie. And each of those 4 times I walked away saying that either a boss had no interest in the details or he had no earthly idea of what he wanted, because after each meeting he contributed essentially nothing. And so we continue to arrange our schedule to meet with him, and finally, when it realized it really had nothing to contribute, he finally stopped meeting with us. Now, that is really telling that a boss would lie in that regard, and that he really had no interest in the details. I am convinced, and I think Kirshner is as well, that there's a reason that a boss wouldn't sign any peace deal under any conditions, and that is that his position, and as a matter of fact, the support that the Fakistinians receive from the rest of the Muslim world is predicated entirely on having the rift between Muslims and Jews remain open and raw. And if there was actually peace between the Fakistinians and the Israelis, then the Fakistinians would be viewed the same way the Kurds are in the Islamic world.
Yeah, no value
and they would
at
all be, they'd all be out of a job and left destitute. So he has no interest in peace. And of course, Kirshner also said, the problem of terrorism is very real, and it's perpetrated by the Palestinians against Jews. For a boss to sponsor vicious attacks on Jews as a result of this plan is extremely bad. He even said, one of the things that's interesting is that the Islamic world, the Arab world, most Arab countries didn't denounce the plan. They had very measured statements about it because, in fact, they recognize this is probably the best option the Palestinians have had. And even in Europe, he says, there's been no joint communique denouncing it, which would be the standard operating procedure, because quite frankly, there are a lot of European politicians that recognize this is really best for everyone. So he's bold, he's blunt, he only makes one mistake, and that is he actually refers to these people as Palestinians, and they're not. And he actually refers to a place called Palestine, and there is no such place. And I think it's fundamental to the truth to acknowledge the fact that there are no Palestinians and there is no place called Palestine. But apart from that, Kirshner's sharp. In fact, I felt almost like I was listening to an adult, which I haven't heard much of in years. What do you guys think about the Iowa caucus? They have no idea who voted for whom.
Yeah, I did hear a little
After
of that.
all of this, you want to have them run the country. They can't even run a caucus.
Yeah, from Iowa.
In a small state. And they've been there for what? Been working on it for a year?
Probably two, more likely.
Oh, and then finally the guy that is the actual winner is somebody no one ever heard of before. I mean, the highlight of his political career is that he was the mayor of some podunk town in Indiana. Oh, and by the way, he's openly gay. And you just go, say what? And his qualifications were that he's not qualified. You need an outsider today. And the guy that came in second is an acknowledged socialist.
Wow.
I mean, hasn't anybody figured out that socialism didn't work?
Apparently not. Keep trying.
Apparently not. So the world is pretty much upside down. I don't think we know what the extent is of the coronavirus. I guess many tens of thousands have been infected. The doctor who actually blew the whistle and could have stopped it early on, but he was rejected by the Chinese government, silenced, has now died of it. But it continues to spread. It's in now most countries around the world. But it's still interesting. You go ahead.
We have two in this hospital. Not this particular building, but in in the complex, because I read the notice this morning. Yes, indeed.
Wow. Yeah, we're not hearing.
Sure
I get 20 some odd news feeds, and none of those news feeds are talking about American coronavirus outbreaks.
It's on every floor. There's a brochure on every floor. It's telling you so not to be worried. We have
telling
it
you
under control.
Not to be worried.
That's what it said.
Okay.
When they tell you not to be worried, that's the time to start worrying.
I know. That's when you start to worry. So, yeah.
Oh,
goodness. Yeah, that's right. So
we ended our program last week with a startling revelation, and I'll read this again and get your guys' impression. I have to tell you that since the time this last show, I've translated more of not only some of the early Mizmors. I'm now through, I think, 16 or 7. I think through 17 now. So I've translated Mizmors 1 through 17, and Coming Home in Our Time. But I've also translated 3 sweeping sections of Yirmiyah, where Yirmiyah speaks specifically of what's going to happen in the last days and how Yahweh is returning for Yisrael and Yehudah and is bringing Dowd back with him. The prophecies are just so overwhelmingly strong. But as I was translating some of the more recent Mizmors, Yahweh explains why Yashaya 5 and 6 were necessary. And he makes it really clear. In fact, the current chapter that I've just sent out, my current draft of to you guys, God's searching for somebody with understanding among his people. Somebody that's going to take the time to systematically listen to what he has to say and think about it in such a way that they come to reasoned and rational conclusions and then are willing to share it. And Yahweh's first choice always is to work with Yehudah, and there's no one in Yehudah. He goes to Yisrael. And what's happened is that over the past 2,500 years, according to God, there hasn't been a single Yisraelite or Yehudim who has been up to the challenge, who God could work with. Not one. And I'm of the conclusion, and God, by the way, says it that way. He said, I couldn't find one. I couldn't find a single one.
Now I'm sorry. You're referring to Psalm 14, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah, because I think I read that yesterday. Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't find one.
So it's amazing.
Looking for somebody with some understanding. I couldn't find anybody. Yeah, 14, 15, 16, and maybe even 17, or in chapter 7.
But yes.
Yeah, of this new chapter. And so the natural thing to expect is that Yahweh's going to do one or two things. If you're going to go all that time without a single Yehudim being qualified.
Involved.
And there is a qualification here. You got to be open-minded and reasonable and rational and willing to take the time to study every word and to see where the words lead and to go where they lead and to be to show a willingness to understand. And he couldn't find one. So your first thing is, okay, well, then Yahweh will intervene, and that's a lot of time. He's going to reach out to his people some other way, but he can't. He just can't. Even when Yahweh comes back, this most amazing day, and according to Yahweh and Yirmiyah, he says, this day is unlike any other day that the world has ever experienced. And it's not like any other day in a good way. It's in a really bad way, but it's like no other day. But even when Yahweh comes back to rid the world of every Gentile country and institution, all of them, he's not doing it alone.
No.
He's working with Dowd. When he came in to rescue the children of Yisrael from Mitzrayim, from the crucibles of Egypt, he didn't do it alone. He went in there with a broken down 80-year-old shepherd, Moshe, and a stutterer. When God wanted to bring his people together as a unified Yisrael with its capital in Jerusalem, he didn't do it alone. He did it with Dowd. Every time Yahweh wanted to reveal his message to his people, he didn't just crank it out and say, yeah, well, I'll just talk to him directly, thank you. No. He chose to work through a prophet. So Yahweh can't do anything other than what he's committed to doing, which is to find someone among his creation to speak through, to work with.
I find that rather comforting, don't you? That he wants to engage so much.
Yeah, I do, and that he's willing to put up with our ineptness.
Sure.
I mean, how would you spend eternity with a God that had a superiority complex that says, you're so stupid, people. I don't want to spend any time with you. Get out of my sight. Wouldn't you rather spend time with a God who says, I created the universe because I want to experience doing things together.
Yes.
And the more things we do together, the more we're going to grow, and the more we're going to understand, the more fun we're going to have. So, I mean, I think it's marvelous. Besides the fact, the three of us would be out of a job.
That's true.
The best job in the world.
Yeah.
If God didn't want to work with flawed implements, we'd be toast.
I'd be in trouble.
It's the same story of the first grade teacher, when they bring all the children, he says, what do you bring these people for? They can't even read. Duh. That's what you're for. So to lift them up.
Yeah. So then the question becomes, okay, so he is not going to do it alone. He can't do it through Yisrael or Yehudah. So now his options are to work with a goyim. But the problem with working with a goyim is that until quite recently, there wasn't any way for a goyim to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't just take some translation and go from there, and you can't rely. You can get pretty close to the truth with the Masoretic text, but even then, you've got to be able to read the Hebrew that underlies it. Not a lot of goy are going to learn Hebrew to read the Masoretic text, and until the Dead Sea Scrolls came out and were published, they found in 1950, but they weren't published until about 15 years ago. So until they came out and were published, and until there were really copious and effective tools, and many of them, from interlinears to lexicons, that you could use to translate from the Dead Sea Scrolls and from the Masoretic text and corrected by the Dead Sea Scrolls, how would you do this? And realistically, for most of the past 2,000 years, if you did what we are doing, you would have no voice. And in fact, you'd be tortured to death.
You'd be killed, absolutely.
Yeah, you'd be killed, and you'd have zero chance of being able to communicate your message to anyone. So it wasn't possible for Yahweh to choose even a goyim, Gentile, to do this, because there's no way that the Gentile would have access to the same information that we're using, old texts and means to accurately translate them, that have no voice. Until the internet was created and we have this means of disseminating information on the internet, even this show is broadcast via the internet, there was no way to communicate the message, and until fairly recently, to do so would have gotten the speaker killed.
Mm-hmm.
So now that puts us into today's time, and you have another reinforcing factor here, which is that we are now in the time of restoration and return, and we are fast approaching the time of Jacob's troubles. And it wasn't until the approach of the time of restoration and return for Yisrael and Yehudah with Yahweh that this message is going to resonate, and it isn't until the time of Jacob's troubles that the intensity of the anti-Semitism is going to be so great that the Jews who still live outside Israel would even consider going back. So much of this has just been destined by the tools that have been made available, the conduit to communicate the information, the political climate that allows us to do this, and the fact that we're for the first time now experiencing receptive ears, because we are now in the time of restoration and return. And the number of receptive ears is going to grow exponentially as we move into this horrible time of Jacob's troubles. Personally, I think that the time of restoration and return is well underway. I think it began really in 1948 and is just accelerating. But the time of Jacob's troubles, the severe part of it really doesn't commence until about 2029. So we are moving rapidly towards it. But what is that? 10 years from now. Yeah. So it's not all that. Yeah, not all that far away. So all of that said, we have this by design opportunity at this time for Yahweh to find a goy with whom he can work to convey his message to Israel and Yehudah. And so, to a large degree, we have this opportunity by default, and that there were no Jews willing to do it, and by default in the sense that we just happened to be in the right time, and by default we just happened to be in the right place, and by default we just happen to speak the language that's spoken by more Jews than any other, English. So, to a large degree, we just lucked out. And
you're here.
And that's wonderful.
Okay.
The other part of it is that as misguided as Jews have been, I was reading an article that was written by an Orthodox Jew that Leah had sent me a couple days ago. And it was this religious Jew trying to explain how it was possible that Abraham had violated the Torah with the three, he called them malach, messengers, when he combined milk and meat. He drank milk and ate meat at the same time. Now, first of all, they were not malach, they were ish individuals. And that's the term Yahweh uses when he takes a corporeal form to meet with someone in his company. So that's the first aspect of it, is they got the group wrong. It was Yahweh, but they can't admit that because they think that God is incorporeal. The next part of it that was interesting is that there is no Torah instruction not to mix meat and milk. That's a Talmud edict. Yeah. And so this guy was saying, but Abraham certainly would have known the Torah because it says that he knew the Torah. Now the malach were not obligated to it, but and went on and tried to justify how it was possible that Abraham could have done this without violating the Torah. And you keep wanting to scream and say, he's not violating the Torah. The only discussion of meat and milk is you're not supposed to boil a kid in its mother's milk. So we're dealing with a goat. And it's not about drinking milk, it's about cooking in its mother's milk. Yeah, that's the only instruction, and Abraham clearly did not violate that instruction. And you just wonder, why would people go to such trouble to write articles on things that simply point out the stupidity of their religious beliefs?
Still flu.
Yeah. I mean, now we know that there's a reason that Yahweh prescribed milk and meat during the celebration, which is that he knew that the rabbinical types would write kosher laws against it. In fact, this whole article is talking about, that obviously because he had the Torah, he would have had the kosher laws. And you say, no, he didn't. There are no kosher laws in the Torah.
No.
As a matter of fact, that's the reason that rabbis justify their Talmud, saying there are no kosher laws in the Torah, so the only way that you can be kosher is to read the Talmud. You can't observe the Shabbat unless you have the Talmud. So that's why we have all these laws on light switches and fires and cooking. Oh my! So anyway, it's one of the things that the point of is that, and I've been slow to get there, but one of the things that is really important is that while Yahweh loves his people, they have been hard-headed, and their promotion of religion has been dunderheaded. And so it's so perfect that Yahweh would pick a goy to translate his testimony and use it to awaken Yehudim. It's just perfect.
Yeah.
You know, guys, you were given every opportunity and you wouldn't do it. You know. So anyway, that's why I think all of this exists. So let's read this again. And we're only here because we were refuting what Paul had quoted out of Yeshaya 55:3, where, you know, it says, "Incline your ear to me, elect to listen, and your soul shall live. I will establish an everlasting covenant on your behalf, based upon my verifiable and trustworthy, unending love and unfailing devotion for Dowd." And of course, Paul misrepresented that and said God raised him for the dead so that he will never be subject to decay. As God said, I will give you the holy and sure blessings promised to David. Well, so the fact is the actual citation says just the opposite. But as we were citing it, well, let's go a couple of statements past, because I never like to take something out of its context, and this is what we read. Behold, you shall be called out and invited. You shall be summoned by a Gentile, a goy. Singular, masculine. That you do not know, lo yada. And further, a goy, an individual of a different ethnicity, not known to you or by you, shall chase after you on account of Yahweh your God, and also on behalf of the set apart of Israel. For indeed, in truth, he will lift you up and endow you with honor. Choose to seek Yahweh while he may be found. Choose to call upon him while he is near. You know, one of the reasons that God couldn't find a Jew to do this, none of them will say his name. They won't write his name. They won't say his name.
No, they freak out.
How are you going to do this if you don't write his name and say his name?
Can't.
Now, each time the expressions goy and yada were referenced in the great Isaiah scroll, they were masculine, singular. According to Yahweh, there would be a goy engaged in yada, who is not only summoning God's people to read what Dowd had to say and Yeshaya revealed, but is seeking to re-endow Yisrael and Yehudah with the honor and status that Paul usurped from them, while at the same time reintroducing them to Yahweh. And he is doing for Yisrael and Yehudah the opposite of what Paul had done, seeking to undo the damage done by Christianity. Now, since this Gentile isn't doing this for himself, but instead for Yahweh and on behalf of the chosen people, everyone is invited to benefit from what he has come to know, such that those who seek Yahweh may find him before it's too late. Unlike Dowd and Shaul, both of whom were mentioned by name, this fellow's just a nameless goy, whose merit is based solely upon what he knows and on whose behalf he is working. And yet, based upon Yahweh's frequent prophecies about him and the work he is doing, it would be unwise to discount his findings. Since there are no statements to be found in the whole of the Torah, Nabi, and Mizmor, which read as Paul had claimed, and since it only takes a matter of moments to prove that Paul not only misquoted God, but promoted the opposite of what Yahweh actually revealed, it is still mind-numbing that there hasn't been a single Christian to hold him accountable. And that really is frustrating, guys.
Yeah.
We're considering what Paul said in the book of Acts and what we have found thus far, and we're now, 35 statements into it, that there hasn't been a single statement that Paul made that is true. And worse,
Correct.
every time he alleges to quote the Word of God, he takes what he's citing completely out of context, misquotes it, and then asserts a meaning which is the opposite of what God actually revealed. And he's done it over and over and over and over again. How hard would it have been for a Christian to say, this is all a lie? Go ahead, guys.
I said a tradition that Christian clerics continue to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, if you were to try to find, so, it'd be just an interesting statement. Try to find an explanation as to how Paul was justified in misquoting the Torah, prophets, and Psalms to make his point. Well, I couldn't find any.
No.
The worst I ever found, of course, was Paul's citations in Galatians when, he said that the Torah memorialized on Mount Sinai was with Hagar and therefore enslaved. And the opposite is true. It was with Sarah and Yishak, and it liberated. And so, I spent weeks reading every Christian site I could find, try to explain how it's possible that you could have an author who had written 14 books of the Christian New Testament who lied about the single most important thing, according to God, which is the nature of his covenant and with whom he formed it. And I couldn't find any that was just a bit, okay, yeah, he lied. Well, I don't know why are we putting our faith in him? He clearly lied.
Because the institution collapses, and there's no money.
It's true. Yeah, there's no money. They're out of a job.
Wow.
Okay, now this is the next statement. So, it is also stated elsewhere. Now, is there a reason that Paul couldn't just say, you'll find this in the 16th Psalm? I don't know why.
People might have actually looked it up.
Maybe.
Somebody could have looked it up, didn't you? That's what you do.
God said this.
So it is
Where?
stated.
I don't know, somewhere in there. I don't feel like looking that up. I'll just take his word for it.
So, yeah. Why would I want to do that? Yeah. So it is stated elsewhere, you will not let your Holy One see decay. Acts 13:15. Once again, Paul is usurping what was said of Dowd and applying it to his Jesus, thereby discrediting the Son of God and the Messiah. This is a citation from the 16th Mizmor, where Dowd is the sole author, subject, speaker, and beneficiary. It begins, an engraving of Dowd. Keep your focus on me and be observant, closely examining and carefully considering what I'm doing, because in you, God, I confide and rely, placing my trust. I will commend Yahowah, who provides me with advice and counsel, keeping me informed so that I can think properly. Even during the night, my inner nature, where I discern between right and wrong, instructs and corrects me. I have continually and intensely desired to set Yahowah before me, seeking to be like him, because by me being right, I shall never waver or fail. Therefore, as a result, my judgment is enlightened and uplifting, and the significant distinction and honorable reward associated with me will be ecstatically delightful. My body and the good news I proclaim shall abide and remain, living confidently and established securely. Therefore, you will not abandon my soul to Shaul. Neither will you permit your trusting and devoted one to witness the prison of corruption and decay. You have revealed and made known to me that which I understand, the very path to abundant and joyful life in your presence, being found agreeable and acceptable at your right side forever. So who is I throughout this? I mean, there was I did this, I will be, I can, I think, I understand, I trust, I will be at your right side for. Who is I?
Dowd.
Right. Is there any question that it's Dowd? I mean, it began an engraving of Dowd, right? It's clearly Dowd. So how mischievous do you have to be to apply this to Jesus and to say you will not let your Holy One see decay and pretend that's Jesus?
Well, there's nobody to check. So you can just say anything you want, but God.
But why would you do? I mean, think what is the chance that you're going to somehow prevail, that good is going to come from the idea of twisting the words of God to deliberately mislead people regarding God? What's the percentage of that? What are the odds that's going to work out well for you?
Well, we know it won't, but they still do it.
But why? I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, my entire agenda from the very beginning, as has yours been, let's find the truth. Let's find out what God really said. And let's see if we can understand it and then act upon it and then share what we've learned. That seems like that has a real high percentage of being successful, doesn't it?
Yes, you would think.
Why would you go to this length that Paul went to? I mean, he obviously knows what's there for him to find something he can twist to use. Why would you go to that extent to be deliberately deceitful?
Well, you have to be possessed. Your ego, you have to feel like you're nothing, and that's your ego trip to be somebody. I don't know. I can't think like that, so it's hard for me to grasp. But obviously, there's a payoff of some dimension. But if he is possessed, then it's Satan. That's the way Satan would do it. That's the way Satan did it. You know, with Yahowah, twist it. So
the 16th Mizmor essentially tells us to follow Dowd to God. He knows the path, and he's revealed it from our benefit. Nowhere does it say you will not let your Holy One see decay. It does not say anything about Yosha. But what it does say affirms that Dowd's life and lyrics matter. Well, Paul remains the father of lies. It's baffling that anyone ever chose to believe Paul over Dowd, or would discount the life of Dowd to follow Paul. In a statement we know that Yahweh personally inspired, Dowd wrote, "You have revealed and made known to me such that I understand the path to abundant and joyful life in your presence, being found agreeable and acceptable at your right side forever." How could you not want that? You know, as I'm dealing with the second of the four passages in Jeremiah that pertain to Dowd and that I'm writing about, one of the things that becomes blatantly obvious is that during this time of restoration and renewal, Yahweh is absolutely establishing, raising Dowd's presence such that Dowd will be his co-worker during this time, that Dowd will rise for this event and then stay at Yahweh's right side forever thereafter. And so while there is no bodily resurrection, Dowd's bones aren't going to be reanimated, you know, his physical body long since deteriorated and gone. And his physical body had decayed, becoming a liability at the end of his life anyway. And you're certainly not going to see the David of Michelangelo's misproportions the uncircumcised David, of course.
Yes.
But the closest thing that the Word of God has to a resurrection is Dowd. He's going to rise. I mean, he was dead and buried. He's going to rise at Yahweh's call. And so it's the closest thing that the Word of God has to a resurrection. Of course, the Christian God is still dead and hanging on that ugly stick. As the decaying Dowd, whose value was limited to a single generation, that, of course, is the stuff of Satan's dreams. And that's what Paul said next. Now, when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep. He was buried with his ancestors, and his body decayed. But the one whom God raised from the dead shall not see decay. If you were to, I considered being cremated at the end of my life. If I were to pass away before the Towrah harvest, I'd say just, 86 me. You can spread my ashes on a nice beach. Yeah, a nice beach somewhere. And I would have to say that if your body is incinerated, it's pretty much decayed. And that is the ultimate.
Pretty broken down.
That's about as pretty much ashes dust you can get.
That's about as much, as you can get. When you take the remains of the Passover lamb at the end of the meal that is inedible, that you did not eat, and you incinerate it on that barbecue, is it pretty much degraded at that point?
Indeed.
Yeah.
That's as far away, as diminished from the living lamb as you could possibly be, correct?
Correct.
So Yosha's body, as the Passover lamb, suffered complete degradation and decay to the point of nothing but dust that would be blown away by the wind. So on top of all that, Dowd was wrong. Passover lamb's body is incinerated that night. And with Dowd, he didn't serve one generation. He served every generation over the past 3,000 years.
Still going.
He is the primary impetus behind the calling of Yahweh's people home and the shepherding of Yahweh's people when they come home. Dowd's purpose has the most enduring history and time of anyone who's ever lived. He played this extraordinary role in the unification of Yisrael and the communication of Yahweh's nature 3,000 years ago. And he's going to play an exceedingly important role beginning just 13 years from now.
2033, yeah.
Yeah. According to Shaul, Dowd served a purpose which ended 1,000 years earlier. 1,000 years before Shaul, 3,000 years before us. He fell asleep and was buried, and that was what was left of him decayed. But such will not be the case with the one. The problem with that, of course, is that Yahweh said that Dowd served as an eternal witness, and as the King of Kings, he would rule the earth and always remain. There will always remain a throne in heaven with Dowd's name on it.
Wow.
God said that Dowd would appear as the sun. Remember at the end of Mizmor 89 that Dowd was going to appear as the sun in his presence.
In his presence, yes.
Right. And I'm reading now, and one of the Psalms actually said that he's going to appear as God.
Well, that's to be like him. That's what you.
Yeah, and by the way, both of those two things, they sound like okay, God, you're getting carried away. Dowd's not going to be as brilliant as the sun, and he's certainly not going to appear as God. Let's tone this thing down a little bit. What if I were to tell you JB and Kirk,
Mm-hmm.
that you guys are going to appear like the Son, and you guys are going to be like God.
Well, that's to be light,
Believe it.
isn't it? I believe it. Sure.
Isn't that the whole
That's
purpose
what he says. That's
of
to be
Shabbat,
like
being
him.
empowered, being enriched?
Right.
Right.
That's not an
Yeah.
odd thing. That's a declared thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be like lightning. If you think of the sun is an enormously large object, but in 4 dimensions, we're going to be 7 dimensions. Even the smallest object in 7 dimensions is infinitely brighter, larger, more energetic, more powerful, more capable than the largest object in 4 dimensions.
Logical.
So,
right.
We ought not be, blown away that Dowd is, it would be akin to the sun, because the sun's a trifling thing to a 7-dimensional being. He would have to be diminished to be like the sun. And the whole purpose of being raised within the covenant family and God lifting us up and empowering and enriching and enlightening us is for us to become more like God, so that the gap between us will be substantially narrowed. So that's our fate. Well, the fact is that we know better, and so did Paul, and that's the point. As the Passover lamb, Yoshua's body was incinerated right after having fulfilled its purpose. He was therefore neither raised from the dead nor bodily resurrected. Decay is the eventual result of every physical body, which is one of the many reasons they aren't resurrected. It's counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
And yet all of this was designed to make Dowd, the Son of God and the Messiah, inferior to the man God that Paul was promoting. Instead of protecting Jews, Paul's God deplored them. And make no mistake, Paul wasn't speaking on behalf of nor serving Yosha. He not only twisted and perverted everything he stood for, he never once accurately quoted anything Yosha said. Not once in 14 epistles. This was all about Paul seeking to promote himself over Dowd, over Yosha, over his disciples, over Moshe, and indeed over Yahweh. That's audacious even for Satan. According to Yahweh, Dowd's purpose will endure forever. He will always be at Yahweh's right side. He will be returning with Yahweh to serve as God's shepherd. For all time, he will remain Yahweh's Messiah and King of Israel. He is God's beloved Son and the chosen one. And in the 3rd Psalm, the one Shaul was twisting to serve his agenda on this occasion, this is what we read. Yahweh, what is the extent of the increasing number of my adversaries, my adversities, and of the unfavorable situation my enemies have managed to perpetrate, especially with the overly hostile attempts at diminishing my significance? The majority of people rise up, many who are established, honored, and powerful, standing fast against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him or through him with God. Pause now and consider this. That's 3:3 and 3:1 and 2. And before we go through the rest of it through 8. I think it's important that we emphasize this point. Christianity at its heart is a transfer of promises that God made to Dowd, Israel, and Yehudah to the Christian Christ, the Christian church, and to Christians. And so the debasement and the diminishment of Dowd is absolutely central to it. He has to be depreciated so that the Jesus of Christianity can be appreciated. Jews have to be depreciated so that Christians and their church can be appreciated. So this is no small thing. This is the very essence, the foundation of the religion, this transfer of promises. Otherwise, Christians would have to deal with a very stark reality. How many prophecies call out Jesus by name, or the Christian church, or Christians, where God says something positive, says anything about any one of the three?
Zero.
Yeah, not one. There isn't a single prophecy that names Yosha. There are 1,000 that name Dowd. Ultimately, the Christian God has to be a complete nincompoop. Now, all of these prophecies, I'm just translating them now in Jeremiah. All of these prophecies where God is saying in the last days, the day is going to come, and he says, when I'm going to return and I'm going to restore Yisrael, Yehudah, and Dowd. So if God's saying, in the last days, I'm returning to restore Dowd, Yisrael, and Yehudah, how stupid does the Christian God have to be for every time that he said that he lied, and it says, no, really, that's not who I'm restoring. I'm restoring Jesus, the church, and Christians.
Mm-hmm.
If God was going to reestablish and restore Jesus, a church, and Christians, don't you think he would have said so?
Well, yeah. If he was going to build a church, wouldn't he have left some instructions about it? Organization?
Yeah. Something. I'll
something.
mention, not one.
I mentioned, yeah.
And everything says exactly the opposite. That when Yahweh returns, he is coming back with and restoring Dowd, Yisrael, and Yehudah. So the Christian position is absolutely false. You, Yahweh, are a shield all around me and my source of deliverance. You have provided the gift of protection for me, surrounding me such that others may benefit by the same directions and path. You are my manifestation of power and my attribution of status, everything I value and respect, the one raising my prominence from the very beginning. I communicate audibly by calling out to Yahweh, and he answers me, providing testimony and evidence for me on account of his set-apart mountain. Pause and consider this as well. I've said a gazillion times, we'd all be better off if we shut our mouths and opened our ears and our eyes. And we observed what God had to say. We listened to what he had to say. And if our communications with Yahweh were, that was profound. Thank you for sharing that. Help me understand that a little bit more effectively. Help me communicate that. If our conversations with him were a response to what he has shared with us through his word, the relationship works really well. That's what Dowd did. Mm-hmm. Dowd wasn't sitting there saying, okay, there's a pretty girl down the street and that blue tent. I'd like to get in her knickers. He didn't say, there's a guy that's got a farm down the road. I would sure like to own it. I heard they're having a lottery over there and among the Amalekites. I would sure like to have the winning numbers. There's a new chariot those Egyptians have designed. I'd sure like to get me some of those. He's not asking Yahweh for stuff. What he's saying of Yahweh is that I spoke to you, and what you provided me with is you gave me testimony and evidence for me on account of this set-apart mountain, providing answers. That is exactly the way our communication with Yahweh ought to be. He provides answers. Answers to what? It's not the answers to the number on the next lottery. It's not answers on the biology test that you may be needing it or taking. It's not an answer, is the pitcher going to throw a fastball or a curveball? And could I put my bat on it? No. It's not, will that pretty girl go out on a date with me? No. The answers are what's important. The answers are the answers to life, to what God's offering, what he expects in return. What is his nature like? Those are the answers he's providing. So Dowd says, I relaxed and I fell asleep. When I awake, oh my, when I awake, I will be revived and productive, passing through the summer, roused and alive, taking action and bearing fruit, because Yahweh sustained and supported me, steadfastly focusing on me, such that I could lean on him for whatever is necessary. You think Dowd here is talking about getting up on an average morning?
No.
No.
Of course not.
He is talking about when he is awakened to do the most important job in the world, to cleanse the world of goyish institutions and countries. He can lean on Yahweh for whatever is necessary. 3:5. I will not revere, respect, nor fear the great multitude of people who from all around have taken positions on the perimeter and have set themselves up against me. I want you to choose to take a stand, Yahweh, elect to assist me and be desirous of saving me, such that you enable me to be helpful in the same way, causing me to become an expression of your will by becoming even more like you, a savior, my God. Isn't that spectacular? Dowd is saying, I want to be like you. I want to be literally an expression of your will. And I think he was. When you read things like this Mizmor, I think he's an expression of Yahweh's word. And because his words help us understand who Yahweh is and what he's offering and expects in return, aren't his words playing the role of Savior?
Of course. When
Yahweh calls Dowd back to protect and lead his people, isn't he, in effect, saving them?
Mm-hmm.
Saving them, rescuing them from harm's way? Dowd is a savior.
Yeah.
For indeed, you will strike, verbally afflicting and then crippling all of those who are averse to me, against those demonstrating animosity and rancor towards me, smashing and shattering the jawbone of the unrighteous and unjust, the troubling and vexing. 3:7. Approach and draw near, Yahweh, for the salvation of your family and for your benefit. Take a moment and reflect on this. We talk about this often, but I don't think it's considered outside of our family group, which is that all of this benefits Yahweh. Otherwise, why do it? The covenant benefits Yahweh. Benefits us more, but it benefits Yahweh. Our relationship with him is beneficial to him. Dowd's relationship with Yahweh was exceedingly beneficial to him. It's why God created the universe in the first place. Now, while the Mizmor demonstrates that Paul was wrong once again about Dowd, discounting the fact that he will rise again and return with Yahweh, it is this line which undermines Shaul and the religion he's fostered.
Don't do that.
Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him or through him with God. When we're aware of what Paul's trying to accomplish, we know that this abysmal deception lies at the very heart of the Christian mythology. It is their justification for replacing the Torah with salvation by faith and the gospel of grace. Paul's claim is that the Torah cannot save. But yet, Dowd saved. How can Dowd be saved if the Torah does not save? How can Paul be right that if you violate one aspect of the Torah, you're guilty of them all, when Dowd violated many of them and yet was considered right and vindicated by God? Dowd is proof that the basis of Christianity is false. Returning to Shaul, Paul, the son of evil, proclaimed, "Therefore, my friends," who in the hell is he talking to? You don't have any friends here. "I want you to know that through Jesus, the forgiveness of sins is proclaimed to you. Through him, everyone who believes is set free from every sin, a justification you were not able to obtain under the law of Moses." So in this case, believing in Jesus, who Paul never quotes, so you would have no way to believe in Jesus, none. He shares nothing about him that's true. So if you're listening to Paul, there is a zero possibility of actually believing Jesus because you know nothing about him. So he is still promoting this myth that believing this person that he never quotes and he never states anything accurate about, that believing him delivered a superior result than could be achieved under the Torah. So I would ask, how could any result be achieved through Yahusha if it was not prescribed in the Torah? What was he doing on Passover if he was not fulfilling the Torah? I mean, Passover on that cross is nothing but a cruel spectacle, unless he is the living embodiment of the Pesach lamb. So, how is it that belief, Paul doesn't, by the way, explain it because it can't be explained, how belief in Jesus achieves a better result than anything that can be achieved in the law of Moses, the Torah. And by the way, it's not the Torah of Moses, the Torah of Yahweh. Moshe was just a scribe. It's an impossible situation for Christians. How is it then that that God, who gave the Torah to Moshe, had this document that couldn't perform, but all of a sudden he has the Romans kill a fella, and the death of this individual is somehow superior in terms of our sins than the prescription for ridding us of our sins in the Torah? What in the hell was Yahusha doing if he wasn't the Passover lamb? Well, there you have it. Paul's plan saves and God's does not. God has made it abundantly clear that the opposite of what Paul just said is true. Jesus did not proclaim the forgiveness of sins. In fact, apart from the Torah's presentation of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, Yahusha's sacrifice is completely irrelevant. And speaking of irrelevant, so are beliefs. So what is it that Christians are called to believe? That Paul can be relied upon, but God cannot be trusted? That the Torah cannot save, but faith can? How does one believe Jesus and at the same time disavow the Torah and pervert the prophecies revealed by the prophets, both of whom Yahuwah himself affirmed. How can anyone believe Paul when it's so obvious that he's lying? How does Jesus save? By dying? By allowing his people to kill him? By hanging from a Roman cross so as to create a religious icon? If the God who sent him cannot be trusted, how can this man God be any better? How do you go about believing in someone whose name you don't even know, whose ethnicity you abhor, whose statements you negate, whose stated purpose you annul? If Yahuwah is the Passover lamb, the salvation he is providing emanates from the Torah. If he is not the Passover lamb, Yahweh and Yahshua are not trustworthy, and there's no reason for Yahuwah's sacrifice on this mikra. It is that simple. In his Torah guidance, first in Shemot, Exodus, and then in Devarim, Deuteronomy, Yahweh delineated, by the way, a sin, which he said was unforgivable, denying and denigrating the merit of Yahweh's name. Paul and all of those he has misled are guilty of committing this unpardonable act, negating the value of Yahweh's name by erroneously calling Yahweh liberates, rescues, and saves Jesus Christ. That's about as much of an injustice as you can do to his name. Have you guys ever read any place where Paul wrote anything about Yahweh? I most certainly haven't seen it. No. Not a single statement about Paul saying anything about Yahweh. And yet you read Dowd's Mizmor, you read Yahshua, you read the Torah that Moshe transcribed, you read any one of these Psalms, you read Yirmiyah, that Yahweh's name is in every second or third or fourth sentence. Oh, let's be clear. There is no law of Moses. The Torah teaching is Yahweh's and his source of guidance and instruction. It is also God's lone means to save. Now, as proof, consider the 19th Mizmor, one of our very favorites. And you tell me if you think that the Torah can't save after you consider this. On behalf of the eternal and glorious one, a Mizmor, a psalm of Dowd. The heavens quantify the unit of measure exactly and accurately of the manifestation of power, glorious presence, and overall significance of God. Its expansion and expanse make known and conspicuous his handiwork. A day pours out a proliferation of answers, words in their intent. Night unto night reveals knowledge, which leads to understanding. Nothing exists and everything is senseless without the word, without these answers and promises. Nothing matters or survives when and where the spoken and written message of the voice which calls out is corrupted or negated. When it becomes nameless and is no longer heard, regarded, or understood. Boy, that is the 2,000-year legacy of Christianity, isn't it? Nothing exists, everything is senseless without the word. Without these answers and promises, nothing matters or survives when and where the spoken and written message of the voice which calls out is corrupted or negated. When it becomes nameless and is no longer heard, regarded, or understood. Well, now we know why Yahweh endured 3,000 years when there was no one to work for it. Yahweh's Torah, his teaching, and guidance. Yahweh's Torah, his teaching and guidance, is complete and perfect, restoring and transforming the soul. Yahweh's testimony is trustworthy and reliable, making understanding simple for the open-minded. Yahweh's directions are correct, promoting a right attitude while facilitating good judgment. Yahweh's terms and conditions, the codicils of his covenant, are purifying, illuminating the proper perspective. Revering and respecting Yahweh purifies and perfects forever. Yahweh's just means to resolve disputes are reliable and vindicating. That's from the 19th Mizmor Psalm. Now, clear as words allow. Yahweh's Torah, his teaching and guidance, is complete and perfect, restoring and transforming the soul. Yahweh's testimony is trustworthy and reliable, making understanding simple for the open-minded. Just think of how much more magnificent, relevant, insightful those words are. The words of a true prophet, Dowd. So much sweeter than the sour chords of the false prophet, Paul. Well, since Paul has acknowledged that David served God's purpose, even if it was for a single generation, and since Dowd's words and Paul's words are wholly incompatible, indeed the antithesis of one another, there is no rational way to construe Paul as having told the truth. Pause now and think about that. The father of lies is so arrogant. He would often insult his audience, believing that no matter how obvious he made it, this is the thing that is just so astounding to me, no one would bother to fact-check his citations and thus recognize that he was an imposter. The prophecy in Shabbat, he quotes next, to intimidate and cower those easily frightened and readily coerced into believing him, was expressly written to do the opposite, providing yet another instructive clue. 666 years before Shaul penned his first letter, sometime around 615 BCE, Yahweh chose a man named Shabbat, embraced this, to expose and condemn an individual named Shaul, question him.
Yeah, it's in the commode.
God's concern was that this heinous man would lure billions of souls back into Babylon by negating his Torah and replacing his covenant. And yet, Paul couldn't leave it alone. The prophet he most often cited is the one who called him out by name, labeling Shaul the plague of death, while at the same time renouncing everything he would come to represent. You know, this is something we dealt with in a previous show, and I don't know how we can keep from going over this, because God made it so abundantly clear that Paul could not be trusted, that the Christian New Testament could not be trusted, that the Christian religion could not be trusted. And yet, just no one seems to take the time to care what God had to say. And yet, he's clearly psychotic and delusional. You know, the seldom considered prophetic witness of the son of evil upended a statement that said exactly the opposite of what Paul was inferring. Paul was saying that take care that what the prophets have said does not happen to you, when in fact the prophecy was exposed, was revealed so that those who read it would have become aware of who Paul was and that he was the plague of death. So we'll read through this quickly, fellas. It says, this prophetic announcement regarding the relationship was received as a revelation by Shabbat. Embrace this, the prophet. For how long and why, Yahweh, should I vocalize this request for help in the midst of this desperately horrible situation, especially since you're not going to listen for an ongoing period of time to my appeal? Directed towards you, there will be cruel lies and a great injustice with Torahlessness and error, leading to death and destruction as a result. You will continuously withhold salvation. Since it is such a distressing and abysmal state of affairs you are evaluating, what is the reason you're having me witness and consider this evil corruption, this gross perversion and troubling twisting of the truth? Cruel lies and grotesque errors are ruining the people, plundering them. And they are conspicuous to me, and they're all related from my perspective. He has been and continues to be contentious, taunting and quarrelsome, even insulting, by harboring a perception which puts God and man in conflict. He is continuously advocating dissension, providing a source of contention with regard to anyone exercising good judgment regarding vindication. Accordingly, he has sought to completely incapacitate and invalidate the purpose of the Torah, its teaching and guidance. He remains unwilling to acknowledge or advocate the unending and everlasting means to exonerate by justly resolving disputes and exercising good judgment regarding the plan to resolve these issues. For indeed, this evil has become all-encompassing, openly averse and hostile towards those who are correct. Clearly, his judgment regarding his means to salvation is perverted. It's distorted, such that it's completely twisted and false.
May I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
How does a Christian, for lack of a better term, or resolve dispute is what I like to say, but how does a Christian get saved? To believe in Jesus, what does that mean, really?
That's what I want to know.
Just to believe, believe that he was the Son of God, well, what if Satan believes he's the Son of God? Does that mean he's saved? I mean, the whole thing is absurd.
Yeah. Well, and how are you supposed to believe in somebody whose name you don't know?
Yeah.
And it's not like, he didn't have a name like, it wasn't like a name like Joe or Jim or Jerry or Joseph. I mean, he had a name that meant something.
Yeah.
I mean, the name means Yahweh saves. Every place that Yahweh says, I'm coming back to restore my people, he says it in first person.
Yes.
And he says, I'm going to save them. And he says it in first person.
Yes.
Yahweh's the Savior. So, and how are you going to believe? How do you believe a person whose name you don't know, and who says that I didn't come to annul or do away with the Torah? I came to fulfill it. Not a single stroke of any Hebrew letter that's written in the Torah is going to be done away with so long as the heavens and earth exist. How in the hell do you believe a person who just destroyed the entire credibility of your religion?
Yeah, and what made that?
Why would you believe a person who is of an ethnicity that you despise?
Yeah.
Why would you believe someone who constantly quoted from the Torah and prophets if the Torah and prophets aren't to be believed? When Yahweh went to all this trouble to reveal these prophetic statements, to prove that he existed outside the constraints of time and that you could trust what he had to say, why would you disregard all of it? What did Paul say that would cause you to believe that he was telling the truth? Did he get a single prophecy right?
No.
Well,
how could you believe someone? Yeah. How would you
he went
believe
to seminary,
someone?
so he must be smart.
Oh, yeah, he went to seminary.
Yeah. Well,
How would you believe someone who
that's
contradicts,
a death there.
who misquotes God?
Yeah. You said it before. You have to be ignorant or irrational.
Or both.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why they want you to believe, is the answer to your question, Kirk.
Yeah.
Because you sure as hell can't know, and you sure as heck can't understand. So what do you got
there's
left?
nothing logical about it. You guess all you got is a hope. I hope he's right. I mean,
I hope he's right. Well, you can't even hope he's right because he's not right.
Yeah,
He's
no,
wrong.
Yeah, he's wrong.
I hope that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't matter that he's wrong.
Well, God knows my heart. No.
Watch what is happening among the Goyim, this says, the people from different ethnicities and nations, and choose to be consistently observant, closely examining and carefully considering that which is spoken about and written. And you will be astonished, astounded and stunned that something this incredible, something this universally invalid and dishonest, indeed ignorant and irrational, is being carried out in your days, even when it is written down and he is held accountable. Rather than look to me, instead of paying attention to me and taking a stand against this Babylonian influence, the Goy Gentile ethnicities of nations will become disagreeable and poisonous, impetuous and senseless, as he makes his way popular among the vast expanses of the world, doing so as if an inheritance, asserting his influence over people and places that are not his to claim. His lofty status and his plan, which he advances and spreads, is dreadful. It's intimidating. It's menacing. It's daunting. In this moment of time, he will actually go with a new and completely different spirit. He will become arrogant, meddling, intoxicating, and alienating. But he will be found guilty, and he's going to suffer the consequences. And this is a result of the influence of his God. By his own admission, Shaul Paul was demon-possessed. His Lord became the Christian God as a result. Through the son of evil, the adversary achieved the goal of being worshipped above God by the preponderance of people on earth. Well, since the son of evil chose to corrupt what Chabauk had said, to frighten and cower his audience, let's turn the tables on him by revealing what Yahowah had to say about the father of lies. Pay attention. He will be puffed up with false pride. His soul is not right nor straightforward in him. Therefore, through trust and reliance, by being firmly established and upheld by that which is dependable and truthful, those who are upright and vindicated shall live. Moreover, because of the intoxicating and inebriating spirit of the man of deception and of treacherous betrayal, the fact he is so presumptuous without merit, he will not rest, he will not find peace nor live, whoever is open to the broad and duplicitous and improper way associated with Shaul. He and his soul are like the plague of death. And so those who are brought together by him, accepting him, will never find satisfaction, including all of the Goyim Gentiles who gather together and flock to him. They do not ask questions, any of them. Terse references to the word they lift up as taunts to ridicule, with the implied associations that mock, controlling through comparison and counterfeit, along with elusive sayings whereby derisive words are arrogantly conveyed. They're hard and perplexing questions which need to be asked of him, and double dealings to be known regarding him. So they should say, woe to the one who claims to be great so as to increase his offspring, acting like a rabbi, when neither apply to him. For how long will they make pledges based upon his significance, becoming burdened by his testimony? Boy, that's hard to
That's amazing.
Hard
That's
to consider.
amazing.
That God was that open with us, and we didn't, as a world, bother to consider it. And what's amazing too, it's not like it was hidden. Sure, Chabauk is not one of those prophets that you're going to say, okay, I think I want to open my God's testimony today. I'm going to go and read from Chabauk, right? That's just not something to be, we're going to read from Yeshayah, you're going to read from the Torah, you're going to read from Malachi or Zechariah or
those are
Jeremiah.
Those are the good. Yeah, those are the biggies.
Yes, but Paul constantly quoted from it, and misquoted from it, but he was constantly drawing our attention to it, as if to mock his audience. And so there's no excuse for not reading
that.
Who does?
I said, I think Satan really likes to do that, mock the audience.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so too.
He does that all the time, where it's just like I'm going to show you just how stupid these people are. I'm going to be blunt and blatant right in front of them, and they're still going to fall for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the story of Satan waltzing into the Garden of Eden. I want to misquote God. Right here in God's garden, I'm going to misquote him and show you just how stupid these people are. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the whole thing. I think when you read the book of Job, you come to the same conclusion that Satan is simply taunting God and said, you're so interested in this creation. Let me just show you how easy they are to beguile, to mislead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to tell them that I'm demon-possessed, and they're still going to believe me.
Right. And he had both Muhammad and Paul do that. Well, it's the arrogance of Satan. They have his two lead messengers admit that they were demon-possessed, and yet they'll still believe. Misquote God. Yeah. It doesn't say much for mankind, does it?
No, we are a stupid bunch.
In light of what Yahweh revealed through Chabauk, in recognition of Paul's propensity to twist and pervert the word of God to promote his religion. It's a wonder, folks, that the Christian mythology has infected the lives of 2 billion people. Now, I have little doubt that Shaul, in fact, claimed that this occurred, but it did not. It reads, as Paul and Barnabas were leaving the synagogue, the people invited them to speak further about these things the following Shabbat. When the congregation was dismissed, many of the Jews and devout converts to Judaism followed Paul and Barnabas, who talked with them and urged them to continue in the grace of God. None of that's true. None of it's true. First of all, what is Paul doing speaking to Jews on the Shabbat when Christianity observes Sunday? And how is it that he's saying that devout converts of Judaism followed him when, in fact, there aren't converts to Judaism? Jews have never solicited converts to Judaism.
No, they resist it. Yeah,
and both in the Talmud and the Torah, Jews specifically avoid saying the names of false gods. Gratia, grace, is the name of a false god. On the next Sabbath, almost everyone in the whole city gathered to hear the word of the Lord. When the Jews saw the crowds, they were filled with jealousy. They began to contradict what Paul was saying, and they heaped abuse on him. We've covered this, but the fact is that that is not the way that Jews responded at a time that Rome was heaping abuse on them. They had no rights. Particularly at a place which is in today's Turkey. There's no rights at all. There is no chance that the Jews would have done this. Now, the fact of the matter is that if anybody knew the Torah, they would have mocked the living bejesus out of Paul. That's just as we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But they wouldn't have done it because they were filled with jealousy. There was nothing to be jealous about. There were things to be disgusted about. But that was it. And as we discussed a week ago, when Paul and Barnabas answered them boldly, we had to speak the word of God to you first. Since you rejected and do not consider yourselves worthy of eternal life, we now turn to the Gentiles. You know, this is the beginning of replacement theology.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews are deserving of death. They're not
and they
worthy of this. And by the way, no one is worthy of the life that Paul perpetrated. No. But this idea that Jews aren't worthy of salvation, let's draw pictures of them as devils. Let's throw them into concentration camps. Let's throw them into ghettos. Let's make them wear funny clothing and Jewish stars. Let's abuse them. Let's rob them. Let's mock them. No, that's the basis of replacement theology. For this is what the Lord commanded us. I have made you a light for the Gentiles that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. No, I'm sorry. That is not what God said. And he certainly wasn't speaking of Paul. You know, this statement, this time is found in Yeshaya 49:1. It says nothing of the sort. It reads, why not listen to me, you people of different nations and cultures, those who are influenced by antiquated philosophies, and those of you who remain alienated, living a great distance away, come to your senses and pay attention. Out of the womb, even from the body of my mother, Yahweh called out to me, inviting me by proclaiming and memorializing the truth with my name. What's his name?
Yahshua.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Yahshua.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon.
Yahweh rescues, Yahweh liberates, Yahweh saves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He caused my mouth to be like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hands, he kept me safe because he loves me. He chose for me to be like a purging, purifying missile. In his arsenals, he covered and concealed me. Now, the reference to his mouth being a sharp sword causes us to recognize that the most effective weapon that we can possibly wield, it's not bullets and bombs, it's not fists and knives, nor bullets. Instead, it's words wielded wisely. That's what Yahweh empowered Yeshaya to convey. To appreciate why God concealed Yeshaya, it's helpful to recognize that Yeshaya Isaiah, who was the most prolific of the prophets, was by his own admission, a failure during his lifetime. Not a single person came to know Yah during his lifetime. And Yahweh veiled the most extraordinary and comprehensive revelation of all time. And that's because his people, Yisrael and Yehudah, weren't ready for the message. And he knew that remaining Goyim Gentiles would do as Shaul Paul has done and misappropriate it, claiming it for themselves. It would not be until Shaul's fraudulent embezzlement was systematically condemned, freeing his people from this plague's deadly intent, and concurrent with his desire to call his people home, that if I may quote Yahweh, this would occur. Behold, you should be called out, invited, and summoned, even asked to read by a Goy, Gentile, you do not know or acknowledge. And further, for your benefit and for the benefit of Yahweh, your God, and also on behalf of the set apart and separated of Yisrael, And for indeed, in the truth, he will lift you up and endow you with honor. Choose to seek Yahweh while he may be found. Choose to call on him while he is near. We began with the longer version of that and have returned to it. Then he said to me, this is now the 49th chapter of Yahshua. He says, you are my co-worker, Yisrael, through whom, by revealing the way to the benefits of the relationship, I will make glorious declarations. I said, I have labored ineffectually without result, having nothing beneficial to show for it, making me comparable to the brevity of breath passing out of my mouth. And I have used my potential to its fullest capacity. Even so, my judgment is right with regard to Yahweh, and that is the reward I have found and that I have for what I have done with my God. Now, this is Yahshua telling us that even inspired by Yahweh, even as the most prolific of the prophets, not a single person listened to him and benefited from what he had to say during his lifetime. Although we would benefit today. And yet, Yahshua still had the reward of knowing that what he did was right. What he said was right. And that was enough. I think that sometimes members are going to get frustrated because they try to help those who are lost and they're not receptive. Well, methinks that Yahshua, might have been in an advantaged position. He was literally inspired by Yahweh on every word he spoke. And yet, no one listened to him. Why would we expect better? So
all we can do is speak the truth.
Yeah. And we do have a tremendous advantage. I don't think we have any disadvantage to Yahweh speaking through Yahshua, because everything Yahweh said to Yahshua wrote down. So when we read it, it's like we were there. So we have all of the same advantages, but we have some additional advantages, which is, one is that we happen to be at the right time. This is the right time and the right place to have people respond, because we're living in the time of restoration and return. So many people are going to capitalize on what we've learned as a result. The second is that we have this marvelous tool called the internet. I mean, the best that Yahweh could do is write it down, try to share it with people, and speak to people, but he could never speak to more than maybe 10 people at a time. And there may not have been more than a few hundred people that could have read what he wrote down. No. Millions can read what we've written down. Millions can listen to what we have to say. And the world is far more receptive today because we are at the time of restoration and return.
Yeah.
And
well,
even if with sharing of Yahweh's words doesn't bear fruit externally, it is bearing fruit internally.
It's very astute.
Yeah.
Yes, it really is.
And at this moment, Yahweh spoke, making an announcement. The one who fashioned and formed you to be his co-worker will cause Jacob to come back to him, such that Yisrael might be gathered for his harvest. So what was Yahweh's answer to Yahshua's mea culpa? All I've got to say is that, I did the best I could, and what I had to say was right. You know, said,
He said, you got a big future, kid. Just wait.
Yeah, you got a big future. Yeah, the one who fashioned and formed you within the womb to be his co-worker, to do this, is going to cause Jacob to come back to him, such that Israel might be gathered for his harvest.
That's pretty big. Yeah. That's a pretty big thing. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and who's going to play a huge role in that? Yahshua.
Mm-hmm.
So he's essentially telling Yahshua, don't worry, kid. I got big things planned for what I conveyed through you. It's going to have the desired effect. You're going to be really pleased when you see what eventually happens. It's just that I revealed this in a distant day as prophecy for another time. And to a large degree, we may be writing for another day and another time. You know, there's not going to be 2,700 years separating us.
But
and, you know, depending on when you started reading, the number is 10 to 30 separating us. But it's, you know, we ought not be the least bit concerned as to how many Yehudim are responding to Yahweh's testimony today, because
we haven't started Yahweh's troubles yet.
Yeah, that's right. We're just at the cusp of all of this, the beginning of all of this. There's going to be a harvest, and Israel is going to be there. This cannot be Shaul Paul that is being spoken of, because he declared the opposite intent. Remember, he said, then Paul and Barnabas answered them boldly, we had to speak the word of God to you first, since you reject it and do not consider yourselves worthy of eternal life. We now turn to the Gentiles. Well, what does Yahweh just say here? At this very moment, Yahweh spoke. Yeah, making his announcement. The one who fashioned and formed you within the womb to be his co-worker will cause Jacob, that's Israel, to come back to him, such that this harvest, that salvation, that he will be gathered for this harvest.
And you know that's prophecy, because they weren't away at the time it was spoken. He was in Jerusalem with them, and they're calling back from somewhere, and they were already there. So obviously they have to. The diaspora has to take place. They have to be in America. They have to be in Europe and parts of the world. So.
Yeah, so then this is Yahshaya's response, because I think Yahweh showed him that you ought not be concerned. You did good, kid. You did good. I'm proud of what you did. We did this together. He said, I have merit and I am honored in the eyes of Yahweh. My God has been, is, and always will be the one who assists me, and the reason that I'm able, always helping me. Well, this then takes us to the statement that Paul raped from its context and then abused to infer that he was serving at the command of God, who made him a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. Well, that's a hell of a boast. This is what it actually says. And then he said, it is far from trivial that you have become the one I approached to work through, to raise up and establish the tribes of Israel, those of Jacob, who will be preserved for a subsequent purpose at a later time, such that they may be brought back and restored. And so I will offer you as a light to illuminate the nations, such that my deliverance may come to exist as an eternal witness unto the far extremities of the earth. Well, the previous one, where Paul said, that This is was said of him, and it was actually said of Dowd. How about this one? Paul is claiming that this was spoken of him, that he would become a light for Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the end of the earth.
Name in there once.
Well, not only that.
That was a conversation between Yahshua and Yahweh.
Yes, and so Yahweh is speaking of Yahshua, the prophet Isaiah, not Paul. And he's saying to him, it is far from trivial. Don't be worried about this. This is a magnificent thing, Yahshua. It's far from trivial that you have become the one that I approach to work through, to raise up and establish the tribes of Yisrael, those of Jacob, who will be preserved for a subsequent purpose at a later time, such that they might be brought back and restored. And so I will offer you, Yahshua, as a light to illuminate the nations, such that my deliverance may come to exist as an eternal witness unto the far extremities of the earth.
Wow.
Oh, it's amazing that somebody could have the chutzpah to
clean that away
was
or steal that away. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Wow.
God is saying, I'm working with you, and this is how I'm going to use it, and I'm going to use it on behalf of my people of Yisrael. And yet, Paul quoted it to infer that God was going to use him to be a light to the Gentile world. No. It was Yahshua, through whom Yahweh was working to be a light that would help restore Yisrael. Yeah.
Oh, it's just growing all over the place here.
Yeah. Well, God did speak of a light for the Gentiles. The verb haya, meaning to exist, it means to exist. It doesn't mean to bring. It follows Yahushua, Ani, my deliverance. Therefore, rather than saying that you may bring salvation, God said, such that my deliverance from danger may come to exist. So I guess Paul wants to be God too. The difference nullifies Paul's claim, not only in this case, but as an apostle, meaning the one who is sent out. It is by causing his prophetic light to shine as a witness throughout the Gentile world that Yahweh will finally be able to rescue Yisrael. Without this light, Israelites would remain in the darkness of the nations, unaware that Yahweh was calling them home. Paul also neglected to acknowledge that God's preceding statement made the purpose of providing this light the opposite of what he claimed. Israel was indeed worthy of salvation. Further, he inferred that you was Paul and not Yahshua, fraudulently usurping the role of a prophet. And then somehow he forgot to mention that Yahshua was prefixed with the preposition ani, meaning my salvation. Likely because Paul's target audience and means to salvation were the opposite of Yahweh's. Now we're all free to form and even share our own opinions. But we are not free to misrepresent the Word of God. By pulling Yahweh's revelation to Yahshua out of context, by ignoring what God had said and would say, by misquoting him in the process of misrepresenting his intent, Shaul became the father of lies. Oh, it's little wonder he didn't share what God revealed next. This is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what is being conveyed by my upright one, Yahweh, your Redeemer, who delivers and saves you. Yisrael and his set-apart one, regarding the despised and despicable soul, for the repulsive and abhorrent behavior of Goy, of the confluence of ethnicities, cultures, religions, and governments, along with those who exercise authority and serve this narrative. Governmental heads of state and institutional leaders shall be seen rising up along with their high-ranking officials. But because of Yahowah, they will bow down, prostrating themselves while seeking to explain themselves to the one who, to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, is truthful, trustworthy, and reliable. The set-apart one of Yisrael, the one who is chosen and prefers you. Yashayah 49:7. Well, it says here that Yahowah, not Jesus, not Paul, is our Redeemer, the one who saves us. Yisrael is the one being saved. There is a despised and despicable soul, but that's the one who misrepresented and misapplied this prophecy, claiming that it spoke of him. He is viewed by God as repulsive. His audience, of course, were Goy, cultures, religions, governments, and religious institutions. Both their government heads of state and their institutional leaders, they're being predicted to rise up with their high-ranking officials. And yet Yahowah will cause them to bow down, prostrating themselves, trying to explain themselves. It's sad. And Paul, of course, would write that all religions were established by God, and that you should submit to them. When God is saying here, no, I'm going to condemn them. I'm going to judge them. It's the Goy and their religious and political ways that God is condemning. You know, according to God, the driving force behind the Christian New Testament, the character with the largest speaking role, is the despised and despicable soul, the contemptible individual and thief who pillaged and plundered without merit, the lowly and little one held in disrespect, the one scorned and ridiculed for dividing everything into two parts, read Old and New Testaments, responsible for the repulsive and abhorrent behavior, the shameful and appalling rejection of the Goy, their religions and their governments. Well, I guess we should thank Paul for taking us to yet another brush with infamy. I'm only sorry it took this long for us to call him out. It's obvious that God vehemently disagrees with what Paul said and what he has done. Yahweh is saving his people, and his people are worth saving. As Paul directed our attention to Yashayah 49, let's consider 49:8. Now, therefore, thus says Yahweh, during the time of acceptance, I will respond to you. And in the day of salvation, I will assist and support you, increasing everything about you, and I will protect you.
I'm almost done.
I have offered you accordingly the covenant to raise the family. Therefore, the land which was ravaged and will become appalling will be reapportioned, repossessed, and maintained as an inheritance.
Well, so much for replacement theology.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have to believe in replacement theology. You have to believe that the God of Christianity is a nincompoop, an absolute moron.
A liar.
He can't tell the difference between Christians and Jews, between, Israel and a church. He's got no concept. But the truth is that the God who created the universe isn't stupid. He is not inarticulate. He says what he means what he says. And therefore, thus says Yahweh, during the time of acceptance, the time of restoration and return, of favorable choices and of approval, I will respond to you, God is saying. And the day of salvation, I will assist and support you, increasing everything about you, and I'm going to protect you. Reminds them, I have offered you the covenant to raise the family. Therefore, the land that was ravaged will be reapportioned, repossessed, and maintained as an inheritance. So much for the notion of a new covenant, with Gentiles inheriting God's promises to his people. That clearly didn't occur, nor is ever going to happen. So much for the Twistian and fake Essenian claims to the land of Israel. So much for the two-state solution. Yahweh is the ultimate Zionist. It's his plan to remove the appalling Gentiles and give the land back to the Jews.
And everything else.
Yeah. I know we repeated a lot on this program. It's just so vital that this message is understood.
It bears repeating.
Yeah, it's this religion that Paul created has caused the abuse and death, the torment of so many of God's people, and has led so many people astray. It's just so important to undermine it, to expose and condemn it, to demonstrate that God's intent is the opposite of what Paul said. Because we've got to clear the muck of this horrid religion of Christianity out of the way for Yahweh's people to capitalize on the time of acceptance, the day of salvation, because it is drawing near. For the truth to resonate, the lies have to be dispelled. And so that's what we're about doing. Well, thank you all. We'll look forward to being with you next week. I can't wait to continue this, because there's just so much that we need to know, that we feel so important to share. To share what Yahshua had to say, to share what Dowd had to say, share what Yahweh had to reveal through them, and to clear away the muck of the most devastating religion ever to be perpetrated by mankind. Well, thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, guys. Good night. I enjoyed this immensely.
Good night. Thank you. From St. Croix to Texas and to the state of California.
Okie doke.
All right.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you, friends.
Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.